Welcome back to our channel. What if I told you that the biggest thing holding you back is not failure, not lack of talent, and not lack of opportunity? What if the real thing stopping you is fear? Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of making mistakes, fear of what other people might think. For many people, fear becomes an invisible prison. It controls their decisions, limits their potential, and keeps them from becoming the person they truly want to be. But here is the truth. Fear is a shadow. It appears powerful only when you focus on it. It grows larger when you feed it with attention, and most of the time, it exists more in your mind than in reality. The people who achieve great things are not people who never feel fear. They are people who learn to move forward despite it. In today's video, we will uncover the truth about fear, why it controls so many lives, and how you can stop letting it decide your future. So stay with me until the end, because this lesson might completely change the way you see fear forever. Now let's begin. Lesson 1. Fear is bigger in your mind than in reality. Fear is one of the most powerful forces in human life. It has stopped people from chasing their dreams. It has stopped people from starting businesses. It has stopped people from speaking up. It has stopped people from learning new skills. It has stopped people from becoming the person they were meant to become. But here is a truth that most people never realize. Fear is often much bigger in your mind than it is in reality. Think about a shadow. When you see a shadow at night, it can appear large and frightening. Sometimes it looks much bigger than the object creating it. A small tree branch can create a giant shadow. A harmless object can seem threatening. The shadow looks powerful, but the reality is very different. Fear works the same way. Most fears are shadows created by the mind. The mind takes a possibility and turns it into a blank disaster. The mind takes uncertainty and turns it into danger. The mind takes a challenge and turns it into something terrifying. Imagine a person who wants to start speaking English. Before they even open their mouth, fear begins speaking. What if people laugh at me? What if I make mistakes? What if I sound foolish? What if I fail? For days, weeks, or even years, these thoughts continue. The person becomes more and more afraid. Eventually, they stop trying altogether. Now, look carefully at what happened. Did people actually laugh? Did disaster actually occur? Did something terrible really happen? No. The person was fighting a shadow. They were fighting a future that existed only in their imagination. This happens every day. Someone wants to apply for a job. Fear says you're not qualified enough. Someone wants to start a business. Fear says you will fail. Someone wants to talk to a new person. Fear says they will reject you. Someone wants to change their life. Fear says it is too risky. The mind creates these stories so quickly that many people accept them as facts. But thoughts are not facts. A thought is simply a thought. Just because your mind imagines something negative does not mean it will happen. This is where many people become trapped. They treat every fearful thought as reality. Instead of questioning the thought, they obey it. Instead of challenging the fear, they surrender to it. And slowly, fear begins controlling their decisions. The tragedy is that fear often steals opportunities long before reality has a chance to speak. Many people suffer more from imagined problems than real ones. They spend months worrying about events that never happen. They lose sleep over situations that never occur. They create pain in the present because of a future that may never exist. Think about how many times you worried about something in the past. You imagined the worst. You expected disaster. You felt nervous. Then the situation happened, and it was not nearly as bad as you imagined. Most people can remember dozens of examples like this. The fear was enormous. The reality was manageable. That is why understanding fear is so important. Fear is often a prediction, not a fact. Fear is often imagination, not reality. Fear is often a shadow, not the object itself. This does not mean all fear is useless. Fear exists for a reason. It can protect you from real danger. If a car is speeding toward you, fear helps you react. If you are in a genuinely dangerous situation, fear can be valuable. But most modern fears are not life-threatening. Most fears are psychological. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of embarrassment, fear of criticism, fear of uncertainty. These fears live primarily in the mind. And because they live in the mind, they grow when we feed them attention. The more you think about them, the bigger they become. The more you focus on them, the stronger they appear. It is like standing in front of a shadow and believing it is a monster. The longer you stare at it, the more frightening it seems. But the moment you turn on the light of awareness, you see things clearly. The shadow loses its power. The same thing happens when you examine your fears honestly. Ask yourself, what am I actually afraid of? Is this fear based on facts or assumptions? What is the worst realistic outcome? Could I handle that outcome? Often you will discover that the fear is much smaller than you imagined. Many successful people are not fearless. They simply understand fear better. They recognize that fear often exaggerates reality. They understand that the mind can create frightening stories, and they refuse to let those stories control their lives. Every great achievement requires walking through fear. Every major life change requires walking through fear. Every meaningful goal requires walking through fear. The people who succeed are not the promisers/ people who never feel afraid. They are the people who understand that fear is often just a shadow. A shadow may look powerful. A shadow may appear intimidating, but a shadow cannot stop you unless you believe it can. So the next time fear appears, remember this lesson. Fear is not always reality. Fear is often a projection of the mind. Fear is often larger in your imagination than in real life. Look beyond the shadow. Focus on the truth. Take the next step, because many of the things you fear today will look much smaller once you have the courage to face them. And often, the life you want is waiting on the other side of the fear that has been holding you back. Lesson 2. Stop feeding fear with your attention. One of the most important truths about fear is this: fear grows where attention goes. The more attention you give fear, the stronger it becomes. The more you think about it, the more power it seems to have. The more you focus on it, the larger it appears. This is why two people can face the exact same situation and experience completely different levels of fear. Imagine two people standing before a big opportunity. Perhaps it is a new job. Perhaps it is starting a business. Perhaps it is learning English and speaking in front of others. The first person focuses entirely on everything that could go wrong. What if I fail? What if people judge me? What if I embarrass myself? What if I am not good enough? Every day, they repeat these thoughts. Every day, they imagine negative outcomes. Every day, they feed their fear with attention. As a result, the fear becomes bigger and bigger. Soon, the opportunity seems impossible. Now look at the second person. They feel fear too. But instead of focusing on the fear, they focus on the action. They ask, what can I learn from this? What is the next step? How can I improve? What opportunity exists here? The fear is still present, but because they are feeding their attention to growth instead of fear, the fear never becomes overwhelming. This is one of the greatest secrets of famous, successful people. They do not spend all day fighting fear. They spend their energy focusing on what needs to be done. Many people mistakenly believe that courage means eliminating fear. That is not true. Courage often means shifting your attention away from fear and toward action. Think about a magnifying glass. When you place a magnifying glass over something, it appears larger. Fear works the same way. Your attention acts like a magnifying glass. Whatever you focus on becomes bigger in your mind. If you constantly focus on problems, problems appear larger. If you constantly focus on obstacles, obstacles appear larger. If you constantly focus on fear, fear appears larger. The situation itself may not change. Only your focus changes, and focus changes everything. Many people spend hours imagining negative futures. They replay worst-case scenarios. They create disasters in their minds. They imagine conversations that have not happened. They imagine failures that have not occurred. They imagine rejection before anyone has rejected them. Then they wonder why they feel anxious. The answer is simple. They are feeding fear every day. Imagine a fire. A small fire remains small if you leave it alone. But if you continuously add wood to it, the fire grows. Fear works exactly the same way. Every fearful thought is another piece of wood. Every negative assumption is another piece of wood. Every hour spent overthinking is another piece of wood. Eventually, the fire becomes so large that it feels uncontrollable. The solution is not to fight the fire directly. The solution is to stop feeding it. Stop giving fear unnecessary attention. Instead of asking what if everything goes wrong, ask what if everything works out. Instead of asking what if I fail, ask what if I succeed. Instead of asking what if people judge me, ask what if people support me. Most people never ask these questions. Their minds automatically focus on negative possibilities. But you can train your mind to think differently. You can choose where your attention goes. This does not mean pretending problems do not exist. It means refusing to obsess over them. There is a difference between preparing for challenges and becoming consumed by fear. Preparation is useful. Obsession is destructive. Preparation leads to action. Fear leads to paralysis. One moves you forward, the other keeps you stuck. Think about learning English. Many learners spend years focusing on mistakes. They worry about grammar, errors. They worry about pronunciation. They worry about sounding foolish. As a result, they avoid speaking. Their attention remains fixed on fear. Now, imagine a learner who focuses on communication. Instead, they focus on expressing ideas. They focus on practice. They focus on improvement. They still make mistakes, but because their attention is on growth, they continue progressing. The fear loses its power. The same principle applies to every area of life: relationships, business, health, personal growth, success. Where attention goes, energy follows. And where energy goes, growth happens. So if you constantly focus on fear, you strengthen fear. If you focus on action, you strengthen courage. This is why it is so important to guard your placets. Attention. Your attention is valuable. Do not waste it feeding fears that made 20 from her. never become reality. Use it to build skills. Use it to solve problems. Use it to take action. Use it to create the life you want. Every morning, remind yourself, I will focus on what I can control. I will focus on action. I will focus on growth. I will not feed fear with my attention. These simple reminders can completely change the way you approach challenges. Remember, fear is often a shadow, and shadows become larger when you stare at them. The more attention you give them, the more powerful they appear. So stop staring at the shadow. Turn your attention toward the path ahead. Focus on the next step. Focus on what needs to be done. Because courage grows when action becomes more important than fear. And the moment you stop feeding fear, you begin taking back your power. Lesson 3. Fear is a projection of the mind. One of the deepest truths about fear is that fear is often not created by reality. It is created by the meaning we give to reality. In other words, fear is often a projection of the mind. The mind takes a situation, interprets it, and creates a story around it. Then that story produces fear. This is why two people can experience the exact same situation and react completely differently. Imagine two people standing before a large audience. The first person thinks, everyone is judging me. If I make one mistake, people will laugh. I am going to embarrass myself. Because of these thoughts, they become nervous, anxious, and afraid. Now, imagine the second person. They look at the same audience and think this is an opportunity. I can share something valuable. I don't need to be perfect. As a result, they feel excited rather than terrified. The audience is the same. The situation is the same. The difference is the interpretation. This is what many people fail to understand. Fear is not always created by events. Fear is often created by the stories we tell ourselves about those events. The human mind is incredibly powerful. It can take a small uncertainty and transform it into a huge threat. It can imagine disasters that do not exist. It can create problems long before any real problem appears. Think about how often people worry about things that never happen. They fear failure before they have even tried. They fear rejection before they have even asked. They fear embarrassment before they have even spoken. The mind creates a movie about the future. Then the body reacts as if that movie is real. Your heart beats faster. Your muscles tighten. Your confidence disappears. Yet nothing dangerous has actually happened. The fear came from a projection of the mind. Many fears are built from thoughts, desires, and interpretations. Let's start with thoughts. Thoughts are constantly moving through your mind. Some are helpful, some are not. The problem is that many people believe every thought they have. If the mind says you will fail, they immediately believe it. If the mind says you are not good enough, they believe that too. But thoughts are not facts. Thoughts are simply mental events. Just because you think something does not make it true. Imagine looking at clouds in the sky. Clouds appear and disappear. You do not chase every cloud. You do not believe every shape you see. Thoughts should be treated similarly. Observe them, question them, do not automatically believe them. Now, let's talk about desires. Many fears are connected to strong desires. The more desperately you want something, the more afraid you become of losing it. A person who desperately wants approval fears criticism. A person who desperately wants success fears failure. A person who desperately wants certainty fears uncertainty. The fear is often connected to attachment. The stronger the attachment, the stronger the fear. This does not mean you should stop having goals. It means you should not allow your happiness to depend entirely on a professionalenglish A.O. specific outcome. Work hard, pursue your goals, but understand that your value does not disappear if things do not go exactly as planned. Now, let's discuss interpretations. This may be the most important part. Life gives us events. We give those events meaning. Imagine someone ignores your message. One interpretation is they must be busy. Another interpretation is they don't like me. The event is identical. The interpretation is different, and the interpretation creates the emotional response. Many fears come from negative interpretations rather than actual facts. The mind often jumps to the worst conclusion. It assumes danger where there may be none. It assumes failure before there is evidence. It assumes rejection before anyone has spoken. This habit creates unnecessary suffering. The good news is that interpretations can be changed. Whenever fear appears, ask yourself, what story am I telling myself? What assumptions am I making? Do I know this is true? Could there be another explanation? These questions weaken fear because they expose the stories behind it. Fear loves unquestioned assumptions. Fear becomes weaker when examined. Imagine entering a dark room. At first, you see a strange shape. Your mind immediately creates a story. Perhaps it is something dangerous. Perhaps it is something frightening. You feel nervous. Then you turn on the light. Suddenly you realize it is just a chair. The object never changed. Only your understanding changed. Many fears disappear in exactly the same way, not because reality changes, but because awareness changes. The more you understand how fear works, the less control it has over you. You begin seeing fear for what it truly is. Not always a warning, not always a fact, often a projection of the mind, a story, an interpretation, a possibility mistaken for certainty. This understanding creates freedom, because once you realize fear is often created by thoughts, desires, and interpretations, you stop treating it as absolute truth. You begin questioning it. You begin challenging it. You begin moving forward, despite it. Every morning, remind yourself, my thoughts are not always facts. I do not need to believe every fearful story. I can question my interpretations. I can act despite uncertainty. These reminders help create a healthier relationship with fear. Remember, fear is often not showing you reality. It is showing you a projection of reality filtered through the mind. And when you learn to see the crodius difference, fear loses much of its power. You stop becoming a prisoner of your thoughts. You start becoming the observer of them. And that is where true courage begins. Lesson 4. Don't identify with fear. One of the most powerful lessons you can learn in life is this: you are not your fear. Read that again. You are not your fear. Many people spend years believing that fear is part of who they are. They say, I am a fearful person. I am shy. I am weak. I am not confident. I am not brave enough. Over time, these statements become part of their identity. And once something becomes part of your identity, it becomes very difficult to change. The problem is that fear is not who you are. Fear is simply an experience you are having. There is a huge difference. Imagine standing outside on a rainy day. The rain is falling around you, but you are not the rain. You are simply experiencing the rain. The same thing is true for fear. Fear may be present. Fear may be strong. Fear may be uncomfortable, but fear is not you. It is simply an emotion passing through your mind and body. Many people confuse what they feel with who they are. Because they feel fear, they believe they are fearful. Because they feel doubt, they believe they are weak. Because they feel nervous, they believe they are incapable. But emotions are temporary. Identity is deeper. Think about the weather. Some days are sunny. Some days are cloudy. Some days are stormy. The sky remains the same. Only the weather changes. Your mind works similarly. Thoughts come and go. Emotions come and go. Fear comes and goes. But beneath all of that, there is still you, the observer, the person who notices these experiences. The problem begins when people build their entire identity around temporary emotions. Imagine a person who feels nervous speaking English. They make a mistake. Then they tell themselves, I am bad at English. The next time they feel nervous, they repeat the same story. Eventually, they grasping was frums. Stop saying, I feel nervous, and start saying, I am not an English speaker. Notice the difference. One statement describes a temporary feeling. The other describes an identity. This shift is dangerous because identity shapes behavior. If you believe you are not an English speaker, you will avoid speaking. If you believe you are not confident, you will avoid situations that require confidence. If you believe you are weak, you will avoid challenges. Your beliefs begin controlling your actions, and your actions reinforce your beliefs. This creates a cycle. Fear creates avoidance. Avoidance strengthens fear. Fear becomes identity. Identity creates more avoidance. Many people remain trapped in this cycle. For years, the way out begins with understanding a simple truth. You can experience fear without becoming fear. Think about some of the bravest people you know. Do you think they never feel afraid? Of course they do. Athletes feel fear before competitions. Entrepreneurs feel fear before taking risks. Speakers feel fear before presentations. Soldiers feel fear in dangerous situations. The difference is that they do not identify with fear. They do not say, I feel fear, therefore I cannot act. Instead, they say, I feel fear, but I will act anyway. That small shift changes everything. Fear becomes something they experience, not something they become. Imagine standing on a beach watching waves. Each wave comes toward the shore. Then it disappears. Thoughts and emotions work in a similar way. Fear rises. Fear falls. Fear comes. Fear goes. The mistake many people make is trying to fight every wave, or worse, becoming the sprace wave. Instead, learn to observe it. Notice the fear. Acknowledge it. But do not let it define you. When fear appears, say, I notice fear, instead of I am afraid. When doubt appears, say, I notice doubt, instead of I am weak. This simple change creates distance between you and the emotion, and that distance gives you power. Many successful people have learned this lesson. They understand that courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the refusal to let fear define them. The strongest people are not people who never feel fear. They are people who understand that fear is temporary. It is a visitor, not a permanent resident. Another reason you should not identify with fear is because fear often changes. Think about something you were afraid of years ago. Perhaps you were afraid of speaking in front of people. Perhaps you are afraid of making mistakes. Perhaps you are afraid of trying something new. Many of those fears may no longer exist. What does that tell you? It tells you that fear changes. If fear changes, then it cannot be your true identity. Your true identity is much deeper than any temporary emotion. You are the person capable of growth. You are the person capable of learning. You are the person capable of courage. You are the person capable of change. Fear may visit your life, but it does not own your life. Every morning, remind yourself, I am not my fear. I am not my doubts. I am not my anxiety. I am not my mistakes. I am stronger than my emotions. I can act despite fear. These reminders help you build a healthier relationship with your emotions. Remember, fear is an experience, not an identity. Fear is a feeling, not a definition. Fear is a visitor, not who you are. The moment you stop identifying with fear is the moment fear begins losing its control over your life. And when fear loses control, courage finally has room to grow. Lesson 5. Stop building your life around fear. One of the saddest things that can happen in life is not failure. It is not rejection. It is not making mistakes. The saddest thing is reaching the end of your life and realizing that fear made many of your biggest decisions. Many people do not notice it happening. They believe they are being careful. They believe they are being realistic. They believe they are making smart choices. But when they look closely, they discover that fear has quietly taken control of their lives. Fear tells them not to take risks. Fear tells them not to speak up. Fear tells them not to try. Fear tells them to stay where it is safe and familiar. Little by little, they begin organizing their entire life around avoiding discomfort. They avoid opportunities because they might fail. They avoid relationships because they might get hurt. They avoid speaking English because they might make mistakes. They avoid pursuing dreams because they might be judged. At first, this feels safe, but over time, the cost becomes enormous. Imagine a person who wants to learn English fluently. Every day they think about speaking every day they want to practice. But fear says, what if you make mistakes? What if people laugh? What if you sound foolish? Instead of speaking, they remain silent. Days become weeks. Weeks become months. Months become years. The fear protected them from temporary embarrassment, but it also prevented growth. This is how fear steals opportunities, not by attacking you directly, but by convincing you to stay still. Many people believe that avoiding fear will make them feel free. The opposite is often true. The more you avoid fear, the smaller your world becomes. Think about a prison. The walls limit movement. Fear creates invisible walls. The person may look free from the outside, but inside they are trapped. Trapped by fear of failure, trapped by fear of rejection, trapped by fear of criticism, trapped by fear of uncertainty. The prison is invisible, but the limitations are real. This is why fear is so dangerous. It rarely announces itself. It rarely says, I am controlling your life. Instead, it disguises itself as logic. It says, maybe next year, maybe when you are more prepared, maybe when conditions are perfect, maybe when you feel more confident. But perfect conditions rarely arrive, and confidence often comes after action, not before it. Many dreams die waiting for the perfect moment. The truth is that life is uncertain. There are no guarantees. There is no path without risk. There is no future without uncertainty. Trying to eliminate all risk is impossible. Trying to eliminate all fear is impossible. The goal is not to create a life without fear. The goal is to create a life that is bigger than fear. Think about successful people. They are not fearless. They simply refuse to let fear make their decisions. They feel fear. They acknowledge it. Then they move forward anyway. Imagine standing at a crossroads. One path is familiar, safe, comfortable, predictable. The other path leads toward growth. It contains uncertainty, challenges, possibilities. Fear will almost always push you toward the first path because fear loves comfort. Fear loves certainty. Fear loves familiarity. But growth rarely lives there. Growth usually lives on the path that feels uncomfortable, the path that requires courage, the path that demands action, the path that forces you to become stronger. This is why so many people regret the savor, things they did not do. They regret opportunities they never took, conversations they never had, dreams they never pursued, chances they never gave themselves. Notice something important. Most regrets come from inaction, not action. People rarely regret trying. They often regret not trying. Fear convinces you that failure is the enemy, but in many cases, regret is the real enemy. Failure teaches lessons. Failure creates experience. Failure builds strength. Regret often creates only questions. What if I had tried? What if I had believed in myself? What if I had taken the chance? Those questions can follow people for decades. That is why you must stop building your crest in life around fear. Do not ask, what would fear have me do? Ask, what would courage have me do? Do not ask, how can I avoid discomfort? Ask, how can I grow from this experience? Do not ask, how can I stay safe? Ask, how can I become stronger? Every time you make a decision, you are either feeding fear or feeding courage. Every action sends a message to your mind. When you avoid challenges, you teach your mind that fear should be obeyed. When you face challenges, you teach your mind that fear does not have the final say. This is how courage grows. Not through giant acts of heroism, but through small daily decisions. Speaking when you feel nervous, trying when you feel uncertain, applying when you feel unqualified, starting when you feel unprepared. These moments shape your future. Every morning, remind yourself, I will not build my life around fear. I will not let fear make my decisions. I choose growth over comfort. I choose courage over avoidance. I choose action over excuses. Remember, fear will always offer you a smaller life, a safer life, a more comfortable life, but rarely a more meaningful life. The life you truly want usually exists beyond the limits that fear tries to create. So, stop organizing your future around what scares you. Start organizing it around what matters to you. Because the moment you stop building your life around fear is the scrotarate moment you start building a life around purpose, growth, and possibility. Lesson 6. Do what is necessary despite fear. This is the final and most important lesson. If you remember only one thing from this entire video, remember this. Do what is necessary despite fear. Not after fear disappears. Not when you finally feel confident. Not when everything feels safe. Do it despite fear. Many people spend their lives waiting for fear to leave. They believe that one day they will wake up feeling completely fearless. They think when I stop being afraid, I'll start. When I feel confident, I'll take action. When fear disappears, I'll move forward. But fear rarely disappears before action. In fact, action is often what makes fear disappear. Think about the first time you did something difficult. Maybe it was your first day at school. Maybe it was your first job interview. Maybe it was your first public speech. Maybe it was the first time you spoke English in front of someone. Before it happened, You felt nervous. Your mind created doubts. Your heart beat faster. You wanted to avoid it. But after you did it, something changed. You realized that you survived. You realized that you were stronger than you thought. You realized that the fear was larger than the reality. This is one of the greatest truths about courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is action despite fear. Many people misunderstand brave people. They imagine that brave people feel no fear. That is not true. Brave people often feel fear very deeply. The difference is that they refuse to let fear make their decisions. Imagine a firefighter entering a burning building. Do you think they feel no fear? Of course they do. Fear is present. But something else is stronger: purpose, responsibility, commitment. They act despite fear. Now think about your own life. Perhaps you want to improve your English. Perhaps you want to start a business. Perhaps you want to improve your health. Perhaps you want to change your life. Fear may be standing in front of every one of those goals. The question is not whether fear exists. The question is whether you will allow fear to stop you. Many people wait for certainty before they act, but certainty is rare. Life does not provide guarantees. You often have to move forward without knowing exactly how things will turn out. This is where growth begins. Growth begins when you take action without complete certainty. Growth begins when you move forward despite discomfort. Growth begins when you stop asking, "What if I fail?" and start asking, "What if I succeed?" The most successful people in the world are not people who had no fear. They are people who became skilled at acting despite fear. Every time they felt afraid, they took another step. Every time they felt uncertain, they kept moving. Every time they doubted themselves, they continued. Anyway, over time, those small acts of courage transformed their lives. Think about fear like a shadow. A shadow can look large. A shadow can seem intimidating. A shadow can appear powerful. But a shadow cannot physically stop you. Only your belief in the shadow can stop you. Many people spend years standing still because they are afraid of a shadow. Meanwhile, the life they want remains just a few steps away. The only thing separating them from growth is action. This is why action is so powerful. Action teaches lessons that thinking never can. Action builds confidence. Action creates momentum. Action weakens fear. The more you act, the more evidence you collect that you can handle challenges. The more evidence you collect, the stronger your confidence becomes. Eventually, the things that once terrified you become normal. Think about learning English. The first conversation feels frightening. The second conversation feels slightly easier. The 10th conversation feels manageable. The 100th conversation feels natural. What changed? Not the language, not the opportunity. You changed because repeated action transformed fear into familiarity. This is how growth always happens. Not through waiting, not through wishing, not through endless preparation, through action. Many people spend years preparing for a life they never actually live. They keep studying, keep planning, keep waiting, but they never step onto the field. Life rewards participation. Life rewards courage. Life rewards people who are willing to act despite uncertainty. Every morning, remind yourself, I will do what is necessary. I will act despite fear. I will not wait for perfect conditions. I will not wait for complete confidence. I will move forward today. These reminders train your mind to focus on action rather than fear. Remember everything we have learned. Fear is often bigger in your mind than in reality. Fear grows when you feed it attention. Fear is often a projection of the mind. You are not your fear. You must stop building your life around fear. And most importantly, you must do what is necessary despite fear. Because the life you want is rarely found inside your comfort zone. The confidence you want is built through courageous action. The growth you want is earned through discomfort. And the future you dream about is created by the decisions you make today. So feel the fear, acknowledge the fear, but do not obey the fear. Take the step, make the call, speak the words, start the journey, do what is necessary, despite fear. Because courage is not waiting for fear to disappear. Courage is moving forward while fear is still there. And that is how ordinary people create extraordinary lives. Fear will always try to stop you, but it only wins when you obey it. Remember, courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is taking action despite fear. So, stop focusing on the shadow and start focusing on the path ahead. Keep moving forward. Keep growing. And never let fear decide your future. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next video.